Welcome to GIA Enrollment Insights Week Part 1. Enrollment in this moment, truth and insight across education segments. This candid conversation looks at the current challenges and opportunities facing the K-12 segment. Joining us today is Mariana Torres, Director of Equity and Access at Apple Valley Unified School District, and Jorge Perez, Instructional Services Specialist, College and Career Readiness at Riverside Unified School District. Let's listen in on their honest and transparent discussion as we strive to gain a better understanding of the enrollment landscape here in the Inland Empire.
Well, good morning and welcome. This is going to be something new, I think, for both Jorge Perez and myself, Mariana Torres. We are happy to be here and have a discussion on enrollment insights and to represent our K-12 partnerships and just have an honest conversation about where we are today and how things are going. So we are going to start off by talking a little bit about how things are going in the K-12 education segment right now, and if we are seeing any enrollment struggles. One of the things that's interesting about that is the fact that depending on where you are, you might either be in declining enrollment or you might be bursting at the seams. So Jorge, can you tell me a little bit about where you're at and what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Hello, everyone. Jorge Perez. I'm with Riverside Unified School District, and in our neck of the woods, we are definitely experiencing, like many districts throughout the state, challenges. As we entered the pandemic and as we're starting to slowly come out of this pandemic. I know for us, things are going in the K-12 right now. We thought last year was a challenge because it was year one of a full pandemic. But what we're finding is that this year brought on some different challenges that we never thought of. And that, has really affected our enrollment for us here in our district. Some of those are really just the challenges of really, staffing our sites as an example. And so we're finding ourselves spread pretty thin as educators, pitching in wherever we can. And that's starting to reflect on the supports that we're able to provide to our students many times. But just my experience here is that it's seen across, because we speak to our partners at our community college, and they too have their own struggles. And so the struggles with them, the struggles with us, ultimately has an effect on enrollment for our kids. Mariana, what's going on with your district? Do you see anything similar or the opposite?
I would say that that very much echoing what you had to say, Jorge. I mean, we had started a year in which all hands on deck truly meant all hands on deck. Counselors were outside doing duty at different sites. Administrators were subbing in classes. We have classified staff. Even our director was driving a route in transportation, because as being shorthanded and not having the ability to have everyone, and it has been a challenging year when it comes to that. And on top of that, our enrollment seems to keep climbing. We are actually about 1,000 students more than we were a couple of years ago. So we're seeing a surge in students as well. And this was very unique because we had to shift some of our teachers into that virtual environment to also do within each of the schools the virtual classrooms. So it presented a lot of barriers to getting really to what we call normal. I don't think that there is such thing anymore.
No, they're definitely, normal. It has its own new definition now, and I agree with that too. I'm very surprised that enrollment. So when you speak of enrollment, you're talking as a district as a whole, or are you talking in your dual enrollment programs that there was an increase?
No, as a whole,
as a
Our
whole.
as a whole, our district has grown, which we're hearing is somewhat unique. We are in the high desert, so is somewhat unique because we hear a lot of districts are in declining enrollment, but we have definitely seen more families joining us and moving up, and we do have a lot of families that are doubled up, and we do still have some unique challenges when it comes to the housing in the area that has been, I would say, even more highlighted by the pandemic, because there's a shortage of rentals. There is a shortage of places for some of our families to actually have access to.
No, and that's why I asked that question, because yes, we're on the other side where we didn't have too much of a decline and decrease in enrollment, but we did see that, and we saw that also reflected with our partnerships that we have for dual enrollment. I know for us from 2020, 21, that was that one full-on year of the pandemic. We saw almost a decrease of almost 20% of students enrolling in dual enrollment courses. Right, for us, it's the CCAP, the College and Career Access Pathway Program. We saw almost a decrease, but that also was due to our partners at the community college decreasing the number of courses being offered for the same reasons that they were facing too, that they were struggling with staffing, they were struggling with many other issues. So for us in that first year, that decrease, kind of shook us up a little bit. We knew something was going to happen, but 20% for different reasons was quite big. We thought by going now in this year to our schools having in-person students that, like as you mentioned, that there'd be some normalcy, right? That's what we thought we knew normalcy to be.
What's normal anymore?
Yeah, right. But we now we're seeing even a decrease this year from even the previous year. And more than anything else, we're seeing it with our low income and our first, gen students, for different reasons. You mentioned some of the struggles that you're facing. Families are pairing up. In our cases, some families are moving out. And so what ends up happening is that priorities shift for these families, right? And so while they want to be optimistic and want to be ready to pursue their opportunities after they graduate with us, I think for a lot of our families, the mindset right now is quite a bit different from where it was, prior to the pandemic. We're focusing on social emotional support more than anything else at this point, transitioning into students, even though they're in person, to be able to handle, what they could have easily done years before. Now they got other things on their minds that they need to address first and foremost before they can focus on academics. So for us, it definitely has created a impact on our enrollment in our programs, which then for us working with our partners at the community college, it's required that we get creative.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're actually working with a community college and 2 neighboring districts to be able to, really kind of blend our enrollment numbers together so that they can run classes, so that our students that are willing to have that opportunity. I mean, are you seeing anything like that, or?
Well, I think that, you highlight a really key point. Yeah, we have through this pandemic really realized that we're interdependent on each other. We sometimes like to believe that we work in silos, but the reality of it is that any waves come across all of our systems. We do see them. We do see them sometimes affect what we can provide to our students, what we can give to our families, what's going on, how are all of these factors really changing the dynamics. In our dual enrollment program, we actually stayed pretty steady and even added some courses in our 7-period offerings, and were able to very strategically just make sure that we kept those cohorts as tight as possible. It was difficult because students had a hard time last year in making sure that we were able to provide those extra sort of special services that CCAP has. You know, when you talk about what makes CCAP different, at least to me and to our students, when I hear them talk, it has to do with the fact that they have a counselor and they have sort of a safety net that they can come in and say, okay, I'm struggling with this. I need some help with that. This is a hard class, but I really want to do this. Where can I get some tutoring, or how do I do this? You know, they're not out on their own. So those pieces had to shift in regards to doing sort of that advising in a virtual environment, which was not always ideal. It was not always timely. So I think that the ripples of that really we are feeling right now in regards to that hesitation of, am I going to be okay taking these classes? Am I, now that I'm back in person, are we going to stay in person? Because I got to tell you, talking to a lot of kids, they still have that fear, and that affects how they're willing to take those risks, and families are struggling the same way. They are being very conservative in the risk taking that they're doing, because you know, we're trying to make sure that in that social emotional learning environment, we're keeping everybody as safe as possible. So we're seeing that even though the community college that we work with has worked really hard, and they are being hit with making it hard to find those instructors, they are trying to provide as many services as possible, but there's a hesitation right now in sort of which way to go with some of our students.
And I think with the community colleges, they are, you know, putting in the best foot forward and trying to accommodate the best they can. But I think, you know, we're all facing the same exact challenges in the sense of, you know, legislation, policies, you know, and so at least for us, you know, we actually, like we said, we decreased a bit over the last couple of years in enrollment. And so one of the things that we're facing this year is that while we are in person, it's the mandates, you know, the differences between our community colleges and what they have with their unions and their, you know, their agreements, and what we have here with our students. And so it becomes very difficult to be able to offer courses, because we have to kind of meet and respect each other's systems agreements. So for us, we were still offering classes online. We're still offering, but, you know, we're entering where our students, we have a cohort of group of kids that are going to do chemistry. And so the lab requires that they attend the community college one Friday, every Friday, you know, from here up until the end of their senior year. So trying to convince a student to give up, you know, 3 hours, 4 hours in the evening every Friday is becoming a challenge. And then once we convince our students of that, as an example, then the other challenge becomes now our community college requires that they show proof of vaccination, like physically show proof. We're not doing that requirement where they have to show us proof here in our district. So to be able to inform our students that this is being required not by us, but by our, you know, another institution, that's also right now, we're still waiting to hear from a few families. So that's going to limit also the participation, we believe, you know, in courses such as, in this case, chemistry. So it's just all these little things that we weren't necessarily thinking about that could have that impact that's affecting. But, you know, overall, I think our students, their feelings about going to college, I think they're still very positive, but they're very optimistic. They still want to pursue. When we looked at our data reports for like student clearinghouses, as an example, one of the things that surprised us was that we thought more students were going to go to our local community colleges, right, and not necessarily to the 4 universities, because in our minds, it's counselors, you know, teachers, college prep teachers, you know, administrators. We were thinking, you know, why would a student want to pay a high tuition and do all their courses online when they could do that from home here at the community college locally? But what we learned is that we actually had almost a 10% drop of our student enrollment at our local community college. But we only had about a 1%, well, actually more than 2% drop into 4 universities. Like for us, it's UC Riverside and Cal State San Bernardino. So for us, Enrollment in 4 universities was a smaller drop, a decrease from previous years compared to that of our community colleges. And so just in conversations with parents at the parent nights and things of that sort, what we're learning is that a lot of students still want to be able to pursue now more than ever the opportunity to just get out there, be able to hopefully have that opportunity to venture out and not be locked in at home. But those fears, of course, we're still facing them day to day with them.
Well, and I think that one thing that we notice, universities, our Cal State San Bernardino for us is about a 45-minute drive. Our UC Riverside is an hour drive, but in comparison to other, 4-year universities, still that's pretty local. We have seen kids more and more choose closer to home universities, which is surprising. They want to go away, but they don't want to go away as far as they used to, because
True.
there was a lot of hesitation, but the hope, the fact that they might actually get to attend the university and live there, it's well and kicking. With our dual enrollment kids, one of the things that the families really appreciate is that bridge, is the fact that they are going to walk in with units under their belt. A lot of our students talked about, we had some really great conversations with our students a couple of weeks back, and they were talking about how difficult it has been, for example, for some of them to do well in their AP classes, and how this is an opportunity for them to practice the rigor, have a class that's going to count towards their college, and be able to show that they can do the work, not just take a test. And that has really been powerful in regards to giving our kids options and the ability of not one size fits all. For us, we really looked at including IGETC courses into that system, so that we're making sure that we're maximizing what they can do with those courses once they leave us. But we do have other opportunities through CTE and through articulated courses that give some flexibility to really what the students' interests are.
And we're there with you. We do also offer the career technical education courses here in articulation. We still have a good amount of students pursuing the concurrent enrollment process when they can't fit our CCAP courses into their schedules. So they're still being very optimistic as to what the opportunities are out there, and wanting, and you hit it right on the nail on the head, that if our students, AP is a great option. It's a great option, but what they're realizing too is that this is another opportunity for them to be able to demonstrate, that they can actually, fulfill that college level coursework in a different manner, right? That they can do the work, and it's not just based on a test. And I think more and more students are starting to see that. And that's becoming a challenge for us, because then now we have the issues of conversations with staff about, you're going to reduce my classes by one. So we're doing the same things you folks are doing, where we're being very strategic and intentional as to how we select our courses with, for the offerings that they are transferable to the CSUs and UCs. That we cross-reference that with the IGETC, making sure that it can be applied to, a general ed plan once they arrive on the community colleges, if that's where they wish to go directly out of high school. So, we're trying to be very intentional as to the courses, but also the third big item is trying to make sure that the courses are, not in addition to, but fulfilling a requirement for graduation without, and this is the biggest piece, without crossing any lines of taking or offering courses that are being offered on their high school campus. So we're trying to be super careful with those pieces there. But it's a beautiful dance we have to do. It's one that, right now I have a little note here that I have to give back to one of my schools, because the counselors at one of our meetings expressed, and rightfully so, that's what we want from them. But express that, hey, these courses you're asking us to fulfill, we have sociology as an example, psychology, their response is, we offer those courses on a high school, so why are you offering that? We want the following courses. And so having to explain to them that we don't just get to open up a catalog and pick whatever we want for that specific school and whatever we want for the other school. All right. So that in times like this, we have that flexibility that if we do have a small lower enrollment at one school and a smaller, we can combine those two and be able to still offer that opportunity. So it's just having those, critical conversations that need to take place with our counselors or our administrators, and more importantly, our teachers, to make sure that they understand that it's not something that is going to impede on their ability to be able to teach their, their subject matter that they love on the campus, but it's just another opportunity for the student to really get into that subject matter through a different avenue, which in this case for us is CCAP. So it's very interesting to hear from your side too.
Well, it is one of those things that we walk a really sort of tightrope, because we want to make sure that we open up and that we diversify our opportunities. But at the same time, we have to be very mindful that each one of our segments deals in their own way with making sure that we don't cross any lines in regards to our negotiations, in regards to our offerings, in regards to those things. And those are things that are outside of our control. What we want to make sure that we do is that we give access to our students to whatever it is that gives them sort of the next step, because they might not have clarity just yet on what their next step is. And some of our students have never seen themselves in a four-year institution or even in a community college. So being able to give them the opportunity to build on those successes, being able to really sort of scaffold some of those opportunities so that they can visualize themselves in the next step. And when it comes to what I wish we had from those segments is those partnerships that you're describing. The ones that say, hey, we work on this together. Just because you don't see me next year does not mean I go away. That just means that this person right here is going to take care of you, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to check, because we do that very well, at least in my opinion, in the elementary to K-8 to 9 through 12 piece. But we are somewhat isolated from this different segments, and therefore there's that disconnect where the kiddos, they might be in bigger bodies, they might have already been doing this a lot longer, but in a lot of ways the opportunity to make sure that somebody's there to answer those questions and guide them through the system is still very much necessary.
And I agree with you that that's one of the things I wish our educational segments, like the community colleges for universities, understood about our K-12, that you did state that, right, that our students need the support still, right, that our students still need to be able to go to someone and ask some questions, but also be guided. And a lot of times what we find is that, well, once again, I can't stress enough as to how supportive our community colleges are, but also understanding that they also have their policies and their roles, and just have them understand that these are still young minds that, as you mentioned, many of them didn't even see themselves that they could complete or participate in a college course, and to put them in that type of an opportunity, we want to make sure that they're successful. These are still 10th, 11th, and sometimes even seniors that are doing this for the first time, and in some cases without any or limited support from home, because they're the first ones to ever do this. And so, I think that's one of the things that I really wish our partners in higher education kind of understood the reasoning behind why, we, and I hate when they use the term handhold them, right? You just gotta let them grow.
I like warm handoff, because we don't want them back. We just want you to make sure that,
That's what we say too. We're like, look, it's not that we're hand holding and we're making sure that when we let them fly, that they don't fall straight down. We want to make sure that they continue, that they're from the transition in 12th grade to that first year in college, from that first year in college, right, that they transition into their second year and graduate with their certificate, their degree, the bachelor's or whatever it may be. But and I think overall, I think a lot of us are understanding of that participate in dual enrollment. But I think sometimes, just, and the same thing happens on our end too. They have to remind us that, hey, this is a young adult, even though they're 17 or 16. The laws in the FERPA, state that I can't do this, I can't do that. So they, trust me, I'm on that end too, where I'm like, you're right, I totally forget. Sometimes you can't bring up certain things, but just that we have that understanding. I think overall, we all have the best intentions, but it goes back to having to, walk that tight line, right? Making sure that we respect the policies of each institution. But that's the tough one.
Well, and I mean, I have 2 seniors at home this year, my last 2 babies. And one of the things that, as we're going through all of these processes, and they're both CCAP students, they have actually chosen to take that path as well. It's very interesting because they are, they are struggling with finding their own independence, but sometimes as they're navigating through this, they're somewhat at a loss. And I think about the fact that this is what I do for a living. I mean, how do other parents feel? Like, we actually have classes that says, okay, your kid's a senior, now what? So we're trying to make sure that we help them fly. But I think that some of that collaboration in regards to making sure that we're providing enough supports, but we're giving them the opportunity to grow as well. Maybe that collaboration with the 2-year, with our community colleges and our 4-year universities, and maybe for them to see that we do have a lot of insight to bring to the table. We just had them for the last 13 years. So
sure. And hopefully they'll only have it for either 2 or 4, right? That's what you want.
Hey,
Transition in and out.
that's what we're all hoping for. We can
Yeah.
transfer them, we can get them going, and we can make sure that they have all of sort of the tool set that they need in order to be successful in their system, because that's truly what we're aiming for.
No, definitely. One of the things I think that's helped us is our partners at a local community college. They provided us data on their students that are in CCAP, and in comparison to the students that are taking those same equivalent first-year courses on their college campus. And what they presented to us really hits it home for parents and students when we show it to them, that our students in the CCAP classes are actually doing much better than, per se, the students that have never done any courses that are just first year at a community college. And I think it has to do a lot with us being able to partner up and make sure that we provide those supports in them as they transition. So they're doing well now here, and I have a freshman at San Francisco State, who participated in this program here in our district. And so what he and his other friends have shared with me, who are now in their first year in college, is that the transition is a little bit smoother. And in talking to their friends, at these colleges, that they're not as scared as to when they hear all of these deadlines being thrown at them, or, I know we're in person, but we're going to be expected to do all this and do all that. And he goes, it's different. He goes, I'm the one that they look at to kind of guide them as to what that means, whatever the professor is that he tells us, because I've already done it. And so it's good to hear that from students that have just recently graduated from a program that are now transitioning in person at these colleges, but are having to do both in person and in some cases also virtual. So it's the preparation.
That what that does, and we have heard back from some of our students as well, is it makes that learning curve of sort of transitioning with dual enrollment just so much less steep. It makes it, like you said, it's at a much more supportive level, the ability to experience that rigor, to know what to expect, and to sort of sample what it will be like and build on those successes. So it has actually, I say it all the time. I'm like, if you have a chance, I don't care which class you take one class, see what you can do. Tell us what you need.
No, definitely. And, I think that definitely would be helpful, not to only us, because it was helpful for us to learn as a district, but also for parents, like I said, and students to also understand that and calm the nerves. But I think it'd be great if all of our partners could provide that to the K-12 districts, that kind of information that, hey, here's the successes that we're seeing, or here are the challenges. I mean, we have to be brutally honest too. So that data piece is it's really critical and important. But I think also helpful for us because as a parent, now speaking as a parent of a freshman at a university who had the program, we thought those first courses that they took, the guidance classes, right? We honestly did not believe that those classes were going to be counted because of it was a 2-unit course and it was this, it was that. And so fortunately, my son's university said, no, we're going to count that. It's going to be applied, but just the unknown is the hard part. And so I know that we cross-check them with, the IGETC, we check them with, under assist.org that it's transferable. We double check them to try and, but it's almost like a guess, and trying to explain that to a parent becomes difficult. So I think one of the things that I wish from other segments that would be helpful would be if they could update an agreement, the A through G agreement, so that parents knew for sure that if their children wanted to go directly to a university, that these courses will fulfill those requirements. That if they went straight to a university, just like ASSIST tells us, that those courses would be equivalent to the freshman year courses. It's that unknown piece, and even for folks like myself that have been in education, the question is, well, does it count? Does it not count? And it's a really uncomfortable feeling for many families like myself and others that just not knowing.
Well, that articulation piece, the sort of clarity that we're all trying to make sure that we're doing something that actually counts. Because many times we have heard back from our students that have taken AP courses or that have taken community courses that when they take their transcript, they're not exactly sure, like you said, what will count and what will not count. And so having that transparency and being able to articulate each one of those and have an opportunity to work together, I think would be the most valuable thing.
I agree. I think that it provides uniformity across the state in making sure that my child knows that if I go to Cal State, this is what it looks like. If I go to UC, this is what it looks like. If I go to my local community college, this is what it looks like. I think that would be a great, in addition to the data, but a great piece of support for us in the K-12. One of the opportunities that I think could come forward for us is to continue the collaboration with this growth of dual enrollment that we're seeing. Is really be able to provide the supports, expand on the supports. We touched on it earlier, Mariana, that we're facing, challenges in staffing, right? So I myself, in the last couple of months, I was a kindergarten substitute. Much appreciation for my elementary teachers after that day. I went home and I said to my wife, I need time alone. I worked at an attendance office as the clerk for 3 days. I did recess for 1 day at one elementary school. So we pitch in wherever we can. But taking that into consideration and looking at our counselors who also pitch in, and just like our administrators, I think one opportunity that we can is to continue to collaborate to expand on these services, right? I know for our district, we heard some great conversations take place over the last few months, and just going to the growing ill and achievement meetings and participating in those conversations really help me understand some good things that are happening in other districts that I myself want to bring in, such as an expansion of counseling services, having an individual that can really support dual enrollment and not necessarily just spreading it thin throughout all counseling offices, right? We still want all counselors to be part of it, but being able to have someone that's more strategic and intentional to support the students in this piece, I think would be great. And I think that's what we're seeing at some of the community colleges. What are you seeing?
Well, I have the unicorn. I actually have the counselor. That's the CCAP counselor. And I have to tell you, it makes a world of difference. But again, going back to very much what you just said, unless we are putting together the data that shows, unless we're able to articulate how that sort of shifts the conversation for those students and for those families, and how having the area of expertise and being able to follow those students and do those things, it's difficult. This is only his second year, and obviously I don't know that we can count last year, to be honest with you, because we're still looking for that one normal year to norm ourselves. But it has made a world of difference for him to be able to concentrate on making sure that he can actually sort of run down all of those pieces that you have been mentioning, making sure that those courses are aligned, making sure that they have the conversations with the students, making sure that we have the right fit for the student. Because at the end of the day, if it's just like any other course, if this is not something that they want to do for themselves, regardless of whatever support you put in place, it's not going to work for them. So making sure that we do those things so that we can set students in the right path and have flexibility and really take into consideration what they need for their learning journey is huge.
Great. And ultimately, the ones that will benefit are not just only the students, but I think society as a whole. The economic impacts by having those individuals be prepared to be able to enter the workforce, be able to enter careers that require a certain level of training. I think at the end of the day, we'll see a great return on our investment there. Mariana, we want to just thank everyone for letting us participate today in Growing Illinois Achievements Enrollments Insight Week, and being able to have this conversation about what we're seeing in our K-12 districts, what we're facing, what we're feeling, and more than anything else, be able to just share with all of you this information of just two examples of what's happening here throughout the state. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us.
Appreciate it. Have a great one.